All right, guys, today in front of me from Backbone Bourbon Company, we have the Big Bash. So the latest release from Backbone Bourbon Company is a blend of straight bourbon and rye whiskeys, with 90% of the blend spending at least 2 months and all the way up to 2 years in various finishing barrels. So Backbone used 7 different finishing casks for this release, including port, rum, Grand Marnier, cabernet, vermouth, apple brandy, and banana brandy. This one I feel is going to be a explosion of flavors, guys. But let's go ahead and get this party started. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so as I stated, this is a blend of straight whiskeys. It is non-age stated and comes in at 100 proof. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. So the first thing that I get on here, there's a lot of different aromas kind of coming off on this one, but one of the first things that I get is like, it's like again, spiced kind of like apple cinnamon. Almost reminds me a little bit of an aroma you get off like a hot toddy, if you will. Definitely like that cinnamon, a little bit of citrus. There's like some lemon. And then there's like a slight bit of apple, like a green apple, like a little bit of like that tardiness. Pretty nice nose. So further into the glass, I get this like chocolatey kind of caramel kind of vibe to it. A little bit of vanilla in there as well, but further into the glass is definitely more of that chocolatey kind of caramel. And then further away, you start to pull out some of that lemon, some of that apple cinnamon aspect to it. Really nice nose, guys. Get in the palate. Cheers. Man, I tell you, there's all kinds of flavors on this one. So the front of the palate, that first sip came off like a little spicy. But the front of the palate started to bring forth some of that. There's like a little bit of black pepper on the front of the palate, like typically where you would get a lot of that sweetness. But then there's also some of that apple influence there as well. Mid palate, there's a lot going on the mid palate. I definitely do pick up a slight bit of like a ripe banana across the middle of the palate. But then there's also like a little bit of, again, it's like some of that tardiness from like a green apple that kind of sits there as well. Back of the palate, it kind of goes back more towards a like traditional, bourbon, where it's like the caramels and the vanillas that kind of sit there. But then into the finish, like that pepper starts to kind of come back, a little bit of that black pepper. Pretty nice finish on it. I'd say medium finish. Yeah, there's a lot of different even after that sip has gone down, like there's these flavors that kind of start to like, pop up here and there. I get now like on the middle of the palate, I kind of get this this brown sugar, like a faint kind of brown sugar note there on the mid palate. Guess that's why they call it Big Bash, right? Let's get to this second sip, guys. Cheers. So what I like about this is there's not an overly dominant flavor amongst all of these that I'm kind of pulling out. So again, like typically on the front of the palate, I get a lot of sweetness. Here it's almost like that. It's like a peppered kind of green apple vibe a little bit. That green apple kind of tardiness starts to make its way to that mid palate, but then that's kind of where it stops, and then it brings forth some of that like ripe banana and. It's like those like brown sugars now are a little more developed there on this second sip. Back of the palate is like the back of the palate changed the most, I think. The back of the palate has this. It's almost like a grape, maybe a grape or like a. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as like a date. But it could be along the lines of like that darker style fruit, but it almost gives me like a purple grape vibe a little bit. And then into the finish, some of that pepper starts to make that appearance, and then again, as well as some of that like traditional kind of bourbon notes, the caramels and the vanillas start to kind of develop there on the back of the palate. I mean, the flavors are like all over the place on this one. This is something that's definitely going to take some time to kind of open up and kind of see where it lands, because I mean the first and second sip have been, completely different. Some notes, stayed the same, but then it starts to kind of, develop and bring forth some of these other flavors. This is really good. This is really good. This may be one of my favorite Backbone releases they've put out so far. Let's get in the last sip, guys. Cheers. The flavor profile on this is just, it's so crazy. It's really good. I really like this one, but the flavors are just like all kind of over the place, and it's nice because it's so different, right? There's so many flavors that appear here, and like I feel like I get some of the influence from some of the finishing casks that they used, but not all of them, right? So like again, still on the front of the palate, slight bit of like green apple, like a peppered green apple, like the tardiness. And then mid palate, like that apple kind of starts to fade, and that kind of brings forth like a ripe banana with like brown, like a coating of brown sugar on it. And then into the back of the palate and into the finish is kind of where it's like this like purple grape or like a date kind of note to it. And then again, those kind of traditional bourbon notes, the vanillas and the caramels that kind of finish that off. Again, with some of that black pepper that again kind of flows through and into the finish. But I mean, you talk about like the flavor wheel. I mean, this really has all different kinds of flavors to it. It almost gives you again like a rum vibe, but then it also gives you it definitely gives you the like that finished whiskey kind of vibe to it as well. A lot of different flavors going on in this one, but it's absolutely delicious. This may be one of my favorite Backbone releases that I've tried so far. But hats off to Backbone Bourbon Company. This is an absolutely fantastic whiskey. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Backbone Bourbon Company for supplying me with the sample here to review on the channel. Guys, again, to make it short, just a wide variety of flavors on this one. Again, they used 7 different finishing casks for it. It was port, it was rum, it was Grand Marnier, cabernet, vermouth, apple brandy, and banana brandy. Tons of different finishings. I don't know the time frame of how long each one of those sat in those finishing casks, but you definitely start to pull out some of that influence from some of those finishing casks. I didn't honestly think it was going to be that way. I thought it was just going to kind of be maybe pick out a note here and there, but you really kind of get the flavor profiles on some of those from the front of the palate all the way into the finish. Very, very surprised by this one. This may be one of the best Backbone bottles that I've had so far to date, and they've put out a lot of good stuff. But this one for me is just like it's the flavor wheel. I mean, you get all different kinds of stuff. I really want to see what happens with this one as it starts to open up and start to develop a little bit more. Like, see what happens when some air gets into it. But either way, man, this is really good stuff here from Backbone Bourbon Company, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You can also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Until next time, guys, stay dusty.